So today we're going to be talking about Vo2Max, and honestly, when I'm riding out with people, I ask people sometimes, hey, do you know what your 20-minute power is? Do you know what your 5-minute power is? And a lot of times people, they might know their 20-minute, but they don't really know their 5-minute. They'll be like, I went kind of hard one time, and this is what it is. For me personally, I like to know all of my max powers. So I regularly like to go out and test my 30-second. I like to test my 1 minute. Sometimes I like to even try like a 2 or 3 minute effort too to see what I can fully do for that. I definitely go out and test my 5-minute power. I like to know what that is. And then on top of that, the next one I hit will sometimes do my 10-minute, and then I definitely test the 20-minute. And then if I'm feeling really motivated, I'll test the 1 hour power. But today, let's focus on the Vo2Max, the 5-minute full out test. So why would you even want to know what your 5-minute power is? Well, here's why. In racing, it's extremely useful. Yeah, I'm not gonna go completely all out for 5 minutes in a race, because if I did that, obviously you're gonna be blown to pieces. But knowing what your 5-minute power is actually helps when it comes to pacing. So when I'm in a crit and I tack off the front, if I know I can do 450 for 5 minutes all out, well, I know I can at least do 400 or maybe even 415 for anywhere from 2 to 3 minutes in order to establish that gap. And then I can pull it back and start running more around my threshold. That's one way you can use it, and that's one way and one reason why having your 5-minute power is important. Another thing is there's been some races too where we have some climbs. Now I know the overall climb might be 8 minutes or it might be, 7 minutes, whatever it is. But I know sometimes there's a road race called Winter's Road Race. It's up north in NorCal. And this climb is about 8 minutes. It's really not that bad. And the overall climb really isn't that bad. Except the last minute and a half is relatively steep. And everyone always goes hard right there. Now, if I know that I can do 450 for 5 minutes, I know I could surely do 450 for a minute and a half of this climb. See, now I know how I can judge it. So if everyone is going full gas and I'm pinned doing over 450, I know I'm probably gonna have to start falling back in the group and come at the back of the group to make it to the climb. Whereas if we're going full gas and I'm doing just under 450 on that segment, I know I'm sitting pretty, I know I can stay at the front, I know I'm gonna crest the top, in the top 5 or 10 and be able to take the descent super easy and recover. That's one way. It helps with pacing in races, and I knowing these numbers, it actually helps me quite a bit. Now, the second reason why a 5-minute test is good is because it will help you with prescribing VO2 workouts. Now, threshold is an awesome metric. I mean, everyone is so gung-ho about threshold, and really it does kind of set your zones for you. But if I was to look at my zones, and here's my zones according to Strava, and my Vo2Max is broken down a lot differently than what I can actually do. So in other words, if I can do a max effort of 450 watts, I know that I can probably do repeatedly around 425 to 430 watts with adequate rest between efforts for 5 minutes. Now, if you look at my Vo2Max zone though, according to Strava, my Vo2Max zone is gonna be 363 watts to 414 watts. Now, that's a little bit underestimating. Now, the upper end of that zone, you're definitely starting to get into your VO2 zone. So when it comes to actually being able to do intervals, sometimes for some people, if their 5-minute power is, say you're at, I'm at 345 watts, and say my 5-minute power was 400 watts. Well, this zone actually matches up really good, and my coach is gonna be giving me targets based off of close to that 400 or just under that 400 range, more around the 370, 380 range. Now, if I'm able to do 450 watts though, that zone is no longer really that accurate, right? I'm gonna be dipping into that anaerobic ability for some of my efforts. So an example would be, I was doing 3-minute Vo2Max efforts, and we kind of had gauged them around 400 watts because that's starting to get into my actual VO2 zone. But honestly, I was doing more like 420 to 430 on these 3-minute efforts. Now see, that's clearly outside of my Vo2Max zone according to Strava. So by knowing your 5-minute power, you actually get to set your zone a little bit more accurately. Now, you don't actually have to set your zone, but when you come to doing VO2 work, you can actually look at what your peak max number is and you can even try to hit those for some shorter efforts. Or if you were to do, your threshold times 120%, then you can figure out how close that actually is to your 5-minute max. And then if it's very far apart, you can just bump it up, maybe do 122% instead of 120. Or if they're actually really close, or it's actually over what your 5-minute power is, well, obviously you're not gonna be doing 120% for your intervals. Rather, you're gonna be probably doing 115%. So knowing what your 5-minute max is really helps for that. Now, the last thing I wanna hit on is just how to test your 5-minute max power. Here's me going out on a climb, and I decided to test my power today because I hadn't done it in a while. So this climb is actually relatively not steep. It's about, I believe it's about a 4.5, maybe 5% average grade for the entire climb. It's about an 8.5 minute climb, full gas. So I knew this climb was long enough for me to try out my 5-minute power. Now, the way you want to test this is you actually kind of want to over pace a little bit. That way, after the first minute, you start to settle at a range and you just want to hang on. So for me, my goal was to, since I knew previously I had done 450 about a month or two before, I wanted to pace around 500 watts for the first minute. So I shot 50 watts over my target. So I'm going to pace around 500 watts. And then after that first minute, you're going to start to feel the burn. So now I'm going to start to drop the power a little bit, and I'm going to pace more around 475, right in that range. And I'm going to hang on to that. And then that slowly starts to drop too. And eventually I'm around 460, 450, around the 2.5 minute mark. And now that's kind of what my average is. Now I'm going to hang on for dear life and just try to hold that for as long as I can. I'm going to be honest with you. When you get to 3 minutes, your legs might already be on fire. Just keep going and keep digging and keep pushing through. This 5-minute max test, it's awful. There's times where I finish and it almost tastes like you have blood in your mouth, like you just have that rich iron taste in your saliva. The other thing too is, I find when you do these completely all out max effort, not only are your legs on fire, but your arms are on fire, and sometimes even my scalp tingles. Like there's just that much just blood lactate flooding the system, just overwhelming the system. But it takes a lot of motivation and mental toughness to really just push through as hard as you can, especially in that last minute of the 5-minute test. So you start out pacing the first minute, 50 watts over what you think you can hold for 5 minutes. Then after that, you start to kind of slowly dial it back about 25 watts and just sit there and hold it and hold it and hold it. Then when you get to 2.5 minutes, this is where you go. You don't think, oh, I have 2.5 minutes left. You go, dude, I'm halfway done. We're almost there. And you keep pushing through. Now, when you get to 4 minutes, right? You get to 4 minutes and you're like, dude, at this point, you're completely roasting. You're probably like, dude, there's no way in heck I'm doing this. You have 1 minute left. That's where you just dig, give it everything you've got. Usually when I get to about 4 minutes and 40 seconds, I'll just get out of the saddle and I will just sprint with everything I have and just give it everything I got. Honestly, it's not much of a sprint. It might be a sprint at what I'm actually doing, 450 watts, but it feels like I'm just sprinting with everything I have. And then when I hit that 5-minute mark, if I'm not too hypoxic, I'll hit the lap button and try not to crash my bike. Now, the super important part is when you finish the test, spin the legs out. What you just did to your body was you completely overloaded the system with blood lactate, and now you have to clear that out of the muscles, and the only way you can do that is by keep working the muscles nice and easy, keep the blood flowing, let them flush out, at least spin easy for 5 minutes just to kind of get things back to normal, and then you can continue on with your ride. The other thing about this is if you have the opportunity, I highly recommend going into a lab setting and actually getting your Vo2Max tested. Now they're gonna be able to like tell you what your 5-minute power is and whatnot, but they're also gonna tell you like the cool metric of what your VO2 actually is. So I've done that a couple times in my life, and that's where I came out. I came out one time with a VO2 of 81. That was a couple years ago. Most recently, the VO2 I've been riding at has been around 75, 76. So we've been doing that lately, and honestly, it's kind of cool just knowing those numbers. It kind of gives you an idea where you can go from there. But try this 5-minute test. Let me know how it goes. It's super hard, but it's also important to know those numbers. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Don't forget to subscribe, please leave comments about this test, how it went, and I'll catch you guys on the next video. So keep training and riding hard.